The ominous vision. It started on an ordinary night. Daniel Carter, a 34-year-old accountant, had always lived a predictable life until the dreams began. At first, they were nothing more than glimpses, flickering images of an alleyway, the cold touch of metal, and the overwhelming sense of dread. But as the nights passed, the dreams grew more vivid, until one night he saw it clearly, his own death. In the dream, he was walking alone down a dimly lit street when a shadowed figure emerged from the darkness. There was no struggle, no time to react. A blade flashed, pain erupted in his chest, and everything went black. The moment before he died, he saw his own face reflected in a puddle beneath him, frozen in horror. Daniel woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. It felt real, too real. Signs and omens. Dismissing it as a nightmare was easy at first, but then the signs began appearing in his waking life. The alleyway from his dream? He walked past it on his way to work, the street lamp flickering above it, exactly as he had seen. A newspaper headline caught his eye. Man found dead in alley, suspect unknown. His heart pounded as he read the article. The details were eerily similar to his dream, down to the position of the body. Could it be a coincidence? Or was it something more? The descent into fear. As the days passed, paranoia consumed him. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every alley a potential death trap. He stopped walking home at night. He changed his routines. But no matter what he did, the sense of impending doom never left him. He began researching premonitions of death, reading about people who had foreseen their demise. Some had escaped it, others had not. The question haunted him. Was he seeing his future, or was he being warned? Seeking answers. Desperate, Daniel sought help from a psychologist, Dr. Evelyn Marks. She listened patiently as he recounted the visions. The mind can be a powerful trickster, she said, but her eyes held something else, concern. She suggested lucid dreaming techniques, a way to take control of the nightmares. But what if they weren't just dreams? What if they were a prophecy? His next visit took him to a psychic, a woman named Madame Celeste. The moment he mentioned his visions, her expression darkened. Death is watching you, Mr. Carter. The question is, will you let it take you? The unavoidable path. Despite his efforts to change his fate, Daniel felt the inevitable pulling him closer. The date in his dream was approaching. He checked his calendar. 3 days left. He booked a hotel in another city, thinking distance might break the chain of fate. But no matter where he went, the dream followed him, unchanging. On the last night, he received a phone call from an unknown number. A distorted voice whispered, "You can't escape." The line went dead. The night of fate. Unable to bear it anymore, Daniel decided to confront his fear. He returned home, determined to prove the dream wrong. He avoided the alley from his vision, choosing a different route. As he walked, relief washed over him. He had beaten it. Then he felt it, a presence behind him. A chill ran down his spine. He turned around just in time to see a glint of metal. A man in dark clothing lunged at him. Daniel dodged, the knife grazing his side. Adrenaline surged through him. He fought back, struggling against his attacker. A siren blared in the distance. Someone had seen them. The attacker hesitated, then fled into the darkness. A new reality. Daniel collapsed to the ground, shaking. He had survived. The dream had nearly come true, but he had changed the ending. He was rushed to the hospital, his wound minor, but his mind forever altered. Days later, he returned to his normal routine, though he knew he would never truly be the same. He had seen his own death, but he had also rewritten his fate. The nightmares stopped, but something lingered, a sense that death had merely postponed its appointment. And sometimes, late at night, he could still feel eyes watching him from the darkness. The return of the nightmares. Just when Daniel thought he was free, the nightmares returned. This time, the visions were different, darker, more fragmented. He saw his own funeral, people mourning, but there was something off. His reflection in the casket was smirking. The next day, he received a message on his phone. "You survived once, but death is patient." Terrified, Daniel started to wonder if he had truly escaped his fate or merely delayed it. The fear crept back into his life, stronger than before. A deeper investigation. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel sought out Madame Celeste once more. She was reluctant to speak, but finally admitted, "You altered your fate, but fate has a way of correcting itself. There is unfinished business." Daniel pressed for answers, and she gave him a name, a man who had also seen his death and survived. But when Daniel found him, the man was in an asylum, rambling about how death never forgets. The final confrontation. One night, Daniel woke up to a shadow standing at the foot of his bed. He couldn't move. The air grew thick, suffocating. The shadow whispered, "It's time." Daniel screamed, breaking free from his paralysis, but the figure was gone. He knew he had one last chance to stop this cycle. He returned to the alley, waiting. When a hooded man appeared, Daniel was ready. This time, he fought back harder, anticipating the attack. With one swift move, he turned the knife on his assailant. The attacker gasped and fell, revealing a horrifying truth. It was Daniel's own face staring back at him. Had he killed himself, or was fate finally reclaiming its due? As the sirens echoed in the night, Daniel fell to his knees, laughing and crying at the same time. He had escaped death, but at what cost? The cycle continues. Daniel's victory was short-lived. The next morning, the police found no body in the alley, no trace of an attacker. It was as if the entire event had never happened. But Daniel knew better. He could still feel something watching him waiting. As the days passed, he started seeing reflections that weren't his own. His voice sometimes echoed back at him with a slight delay. Death wasn't finished with him, it was inside him now. The final omen. One evening, Daniel received another phone call. A voice, eerily familiar, whispered, "It's your turn now." And for the first time, he realized, death wasn't just watching him. It had become him. The haunting within. Daniel had tried everything to rid himself of the growing darkness inside him. He avoided mirrors, he stopped looking at his reflection in windows, but nothing helped. His own image followed him, a sinister presence lurking in the background of his mind. He was no longer just a man trying to escape death. He was a man haunted by something that had become part of him. One night, as he lay in bed, he heard whispers in his own voice, echoes of thoughts he hadn't spoken aloud. They came from the closet, from under the bed, from the corners of his mind. "It's not over," they murmured. "You belong to me now." The final descent. Daniel fled from his apartment, running through the empty streets, his breath ragged, his heartbeat hammering in his chest. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to escape whatever had lashed onto him. The city felt different that night. The streetlights flickered, casting twisted shadows that seemed to move on their own. Faces in passing cars watched him with hollow, knowing expressions. He stumbled into the same alleyway from his vision, and he realized too late, he had been led here. The whispers returned, stronger this time, surrounding him. He saw movement at the end of the alley, a familiar figure stepping into the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. It was himself. Thank you guys for watching. If you want more videos like this, make sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.